This is Dateline News and Conversation. My guest tonight, my longtime good friend, Bruce Gagnon from Brunswick, Maine. Bruce, welcome back to the show.
Good to see you, Regis.
As always, I've kind of been offline for several weeks. I really got tired of the echo chamber and the same stuff over and over and over and over again, and I needed to take a break. So I've been to Moscow for the Friends of Crimea International meeting. That was in November. It was a wonderful trip. And 2 weeks ago, we were up to Archangel in the Arctic for the Arctic Open Film Festival. And all of this gave me a lot of time, Bruce, to just kind of relax, chill out, decompress. And it felt really good. Now, I've been reading the headlines, Bruce, and the headlines, they just don't stop coming. The escalations just don't stop coming. Tonight, I want to start with your take on the final days, the last hurrah of the Joseph Biden White House. Bruce, what the hell is going on there? Israel, Syria, you've got almost daily attacks deep inside Russia, approved by God, who knows who. What are your thoughts, Bruce, on what the heck is going on?
Well, I read the other day an article that said that Biden has not really been running the presidency of the White House ever since he got elected. That they uh, were very cautious with him, never giving him very much exposure, regulating the amount of time he was before the media, all these kind of things. So I'm convinced now that the Zionists, people like Tony Blinken, who is an Israeli citizen as well as an American citizen, so-called Secretary of State, people like him and Jake Sullivan and the other Zionists that run the United States today have run that presidency. And they've used it in every way possible to support endless war, in particular to support Israel, to support the genocide in Palestine, and then the attack on Lebanon, and now the coup that they ran, directed by the United States. I just read an article, even though the US government says we didn't have anything to do with it, it's now clear that the United States was, along with Israel, ran that operation. And then Israel, since Assad left, has been bombing the living hell out of Syria, as has the United States with B-52 bombers. And so it's quite clear that these people are out for war. And Trump has said, recently I saw an article that said his number one task when he gets into the White House is to destroy BRICS, because BRICS is pushing for the dollar to become weaker and weaker as the global currency. And the only way to save America, Trump has said, is to go after BRICS. And so I think that's why we're going to see an attack on Iran, and we're going to see a continuation of the war in Ukraine, trying to continue to bleed out Russia. And then obviously this continued encirclement and militarization of the Asia Pacific, NATO now moving into the Pacific, excuse me, and the US Space Force setting up operations now in South Korea and Japan. So just more war, and clearly there's not going to be any serious change with Donald Trump in office.
Let me ask you this, Bruce. Do you think that these people in the White House, and I read the articles from the Washington Post, the New York Times, finally admitting that Biden has not been in control. for this entire presidency. That was quite an amazing bombshell. When I read that, I went, wow, well, many of us already knew that, but finally to come out in those two mainstream, very popular periodicals was really incredible. But I want to ask you, do you think these Zionists, and that's who they are in the White House, do you think they're bent on World War III? Do you think they think that that's a possibility? Or do you think they're just trying to make things even more difficult for Trump when he comes into office on January 20th? What are your thoughts?
I think we're already in World War III. And at the same time, I think there is probably some measure of concern that they have to lock Trump in by escalating things before he comes in, to lock him into a war. But I also think that Trump ran, as a working class advocate, the hero of the working class. He's going to make America great again, bring jobs back to America, all that stuff. But he's a deep state guy in his own way. He works for the big top, Wall Street, military industrial complex people. He's not opposed to them. He's not opposed to their global agenda. So I don't think he has to be really convinced over a lot of this stuff. I mean, just the other day, I read that Trump was telling the European Union that they have to buy their oil and natural gas from the United States. And if they don't, he's going to put more sanctions on them, higher tariffs on them. In other words, you either buy from us, not Russia or anyone else, or we're going to bleed you. We're going to bleed your economy, force more of your companies to move to the United States, like a lot of German companies are now either moving or talking about moving to the United States, because after blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline by this so-called Biden administration, the German economy took a dive because they couldn't afford to pay this high price for American fracked gas, LNG gas. So, it's just the last chance OK Corral roundup by the US and its posse to try to hang on to global domination and to take down that one institution that is the most threatening of all, and that's BRICS, or as it's now called, BRICS Plus.
All right, I want to go back and talk about a couple of things. You mentioned you thought we were in World War III. I've wondered about that for some time now. It does seem that the United States and its sucklings in Europe and NATO are directly involved. It's not a proxy war in Ukraine. They are directly involved, and their strategic plan, stated repeatedly by Biden and Blinken and Austin, the strategic goal of the United States is to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia, which means to get rid of Putin and then to break up and balkanize Russia and steal its assets. Now, you mentioned World War III. Putin has been extremely reserved in his responses to all of these, they're now daily escalations, crossing of Russia's red lines. Just yesterday, they struck deep into Kazan. And by the way, I just heard from somebody who said it's like 1,795 kilometers from Ukraine to Kazan. Drones cannot fly that far. They can only fly some 500 kilometers. So the question is, did they come from inside Russia? Did they come from Kazakhstan, another former Soviet republic? And so this is not a proxy war. It's very obviously this is a direct war. And whether it's World War III or not, I don't know, but it's very dangerous. Bruce, your thoughts on what the heck is going on?
Well, Russia's one disadvantage is it's such a big country and it has so much border areas. And the goal of the US and NATO has been to destabilize Russia, not only on their western border with Ukraine, which they've done a very good job about ever since the US orchestrated coup d'etat in Kiev in 2014, when they installed the Nazis into that country, who then began attacking the Russian ethnic citizens in eastern Ukraine, right along the Russian border. And Putin is now saying, we waited too long. We should have gone in there earlier, rather than waiting 8 years trying these Minsk I and Minsk II agreements to limit the war, to slow it down, to stop it, to create a federated Ukraine. Ukraine was really crazy because they had a chance to keep all of this territory that they've lost if they had just agreed to back off and not be part of NATO. And now, because they were pushed by the US and by the UK, who wanted this war, they've lost so much and they're going to lose more before it's over. At the same time, you look at the other parts of the Russian border. Chechnya was recently attacked by Ukraine. And now in Romania and Moldova, the US and its Western allies have interfered in those two elections and basically stolen those two elections from people that the voters wanted who were friendly with Russia. They wanted to have a positive relationship with Russia. And the government, because of US intervention, those people lost the election. And now Georgia, of course, the US has been interfering there for a long time, trying to topple the government that is friendly with Russia and has been doing a color revolution regime change operation there. So all over Russia, it has these challenges. So it's easy to fly drones in from many different directions, whether it's through some agents inside of Russia or from outside, from the other bordering areas around Russia. So Russia really has a difficult job of protecting itself, protecting its borders, protecting its country because of its vastness. And the US and NATO are playing that to their advantage.
Yeah. Here in Russia, the people are very much aware of what's at stake. They fully understand that it's the goal of the West, of the United States, to inflict this strategic defeat on Russia, to break it up, steal its resources. People know that. The Great Patriotic War, World War II, it's only 80 years old, but that has been embedded in their recent DNA. They have not forgotten what it is to be invaded and to be attacked from the West. So the big question here is, and when you read Russian media and you look at the comments, whether it be on RT or it be on Telegram blogs or whatever, is why is Russia waiting so long to inflict this revenge upon those parties who are attacking it, whether it be with ATACMS and Storm Shadow missiles from the United States and France and Britain, whether it be the drones. People are beginning to ask that question. When will Russia act on its words. Um, Now, what are your thoughts on Russia? And when you say Russia, you have to say President Putin. He's the face of the nation, he's the spokesperson. What do you think about his patience?
Well, you know, he, as I said a few minutes ago, he already just this week said that we waited too long to respond in Ukraine. Uh, what 14,000, more than 14,000 were killed, more than 35,000 wounded during the 8-year attacks on the Donbass, the eastern Ukraine, by the US-led Ukrainian military. So I think he's acknowledging himself that we've been too slow to respond. But I think that I have to say with respect that I think Russia tried, you know, a lot of Americans, when this thing began and I started working on Ukraine, and they thought I was nuts and they called me a Putinista and everything else. I lost some friends. We lost members in the global network because of my work on trying to tell the truth about what really happened in Ukraine with the coup that ran by the Obama administration. Uh, it's pretty clear, though, that Russia really tried to be diplomatic and use the diplomatic channels as much as possible. And a lot of people in this country would say to me, Bruce, why did Putin attack in 2022? Why didn't he use diplomacy? I said, what do you think he's been doing for the last 8 years? Minsk 1, Minsk 2, what do you think that was all about, diplomacy? And then in the last 2 years, we heard from the former Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel. We heard from Hollande, the former president of France, and we heard from Poroshenko, the previous president of Ukraine before Zelensky, all say that we used the Minsk agreements to buy time, to build up the military so that we could attack Russia. They admitted that. All right. How much more truth do we need? So I can't really blame Russia too much for doing their best to try to act diplomatically. And I think by doing that, they won a lot more of the world over to their side. People all over the world, especially in the global south, really support Russia. I just noted this week that a delegation of political leaders from throughout Africa went to the Donbass and were visiting various places in the Donbass where this war has been fought along the eastern border of Ukraine. And they're saying we fully support Russia trying to stop this onslaught led by the US and NATO. So I think by trying to be diplomatic all those years, suffering a lot of casualties for sure in the Russian ethnic communities of Eastern Ukraine, uh, Russia developed more allies because it showed that they were really trying to do this thing in a positive way. But it was the US and it was the UK and it was Brussels that kiboshed this whole diplomatic move. They were never going to allow it to work. And you can't blame that on Russia at all.
Yeah, well, I completely agree with you. I think in terms of Russia's response in recent days, uh, they have been responding. Many people probably don't know this in the United States because I'm not sure that it gets repeated there, but massive missile and drone attacks all over Ukraine, from Odessa all the way to Lvov, including Kiev, uh, knocking out more electrical grid, infrastructure, bridges, troop deployments, Patriot missile systems, just massive, massive missile strikes and drone strikes every night.
But it must be said, that Russia doesn't do what Ukraine does. Now, Ukraine, when they hit Kazan with this drone, they hit an apartment block. Isn't that true? An apartment building.
Yeah.
Russia doesn't do that. It goes after military targets and infrastructure, rail systems, the way they move equipment and troops around the country and things like that. So, Russia has not been just going around bombing civilian targets all over Ukraine.
It's good you mentioned that because it's the same thing in Kirks. The Ukrainians have been bombing civilian neighborhoods repeatedly, and it never gets reported, although Russia is taking notes. Now, what I was leading to with Russia's restraint, they Putin and Russia do not want to overreact to these attacks, which are not inflicting any serious strategic damage to Russia. Basically, it's a PR win for NATO, for Zelensky, for the United States. But that's it. Now, you mentioned BRICS, and this is something that I think is the most important thing that's happening on the geopolitical macro level. Donald Trump, as you mentioned, has said BRICS cannot survive. He recognizes the threat that BRICS represents to global hegemony, to the world order of the West for the last 80 years. He gets it. And what's interesting, Bruce, is Putin, who really has become the driving force and the spokesperson for BRICS. He said BRICS is not against anybody or any country. He said, we are not trying to get rid of the dollar. Wink, wink is what I think, because already Russia and China and India and Pakistan and other countries are already dealing in their own currencies. They've figured out how to do that. And so it isn't like we're dumping US Treasury bonds, billions of them from Russia and China. It's not like we're
Well, they are doing that, though, actually. They are doing that.
But slowly.
Yeah, but still they are, and they
Yeah.
should be. They should be. Why prop up the economy of the country that's trying to take you down? I mean,
Well, we'll talk about that in just a minute. But I want to go back to BRICS and the movement and what it threatens. You mentioned BRICS right now is plus probably 20 or 30 countries. Another 40 or 50 were present in Kazan for the meeting last month. They all want to join. And all of this is going on, not secretly, it's very publicly, how to incorporate all of these countries from the global south, from Asia, from Africa, and South America into this movement. And Bruce, this movement has declared that it is already here. It's the beginning of a new world order based on different principles, primarily the sovereignty of all nations, the respect and dignity of all nations, the principles of the UN Charter, and the strict observance of international law. And if you read their declaration, it's all about the development of all countries, financial, economic, and infrastructure, not to create a new world hegemon, but a new world order based on these principles. Bruce, I see this, I think like Donald Trump does, as the greatest threat to US and Western hegemony. What are your thoughts?
Oh, it truly is. I was really happy to see, maybe a couple of weeks ago, that Cuba had been accepted as a BRICS partner. And, partners ultimately then could become full BRICS members. But there's no country, as far as I'm concerned, or not many other countries that deserve BRICS membership as much as Cuba for all the years and years and years of economic embargo that they've undergone at the hands of the United States and all the suffering the Cuban people have had. And at the same time, Cuba has this wonderful program where they teach people to be doctors, and they accept people from all over the world who can't afford to go to medical school in their own country, even from America, believe it or not. And they go to Cuba and they go to school and they're taught to be a doctor. And the only thing Cuba asks is that when you go home, you serve the poor. You serve the poor people in your country, and then go back to your country and serve the poor. I mean, that is remarkable. And at the same time, Cuba is called a terrorist state by the United States. Now you compare Cuba and you compare Israel, and who's the real terrorist state in this world between the two of those countries? I mean, it's just absolutely sick that the United States plays this game. I just am hoping that BRICS can continue to grow, continue to aid countries in the global south that have been uh, uh, hurt so badly by the West. I don't know if you saw our latest newsletter yet, Space Alert, but I always have a cartoon section on the last page. And there's a cartoon comparing Mali and France. France has controlled Mali for a long time. France has no gold mines, but they have thousands of tons of gold. Mali has many, 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 many gold mines in their country, but has zero gold stocks in their country. So it's just another example how these colonizing European bandits have stolen from, in this case, an African country, stolen their gold for years, and they got nothing in return in Mali for it. And these things are starting to change because France is being kicked out repeatedly of country after country in Africa. And this is about time. And it's, I think, because of BRICS, because of the power that Russia and China have brought to BRICS, that the rest of the world, who's long been aggravated and upset with the United States and the Western allies, now they finally have a chance to have the backing of these two big, powerful countries, Russia and China, and the rest of the world is literally on fire with eagerness to join BRICS, to hold back, push back this Western colonizing control that has gone on for what, 500-600 years.
Well, and I think this is the strategy of Putin and Russia and the BRICS. Why Russia does not want to escalate this to the brink of Armageddon. Russia and China and all of these countries who belong to BRICS now and want to join are betting on the success of BRICS as a desirable alternative, real alternative to Western hegemony. And I think this is the gamble that Putin has been playing. Now, what's interesting, we talk about good cop, bad cop. Putin, ever the diplomat, ever positive about BRICS, never negative, hardly ever negative about the United States and the West. He says, if they want to be friends, we'll talk. But right now, nobody wants to talk. So we are moving away. They've made it clear. We're moving away from Europe. We're moving away from the United States. It couldn't be clearer. But Bruce, I've been reading over the last week, the Chinese foreign minister has been blasting the United States. I mean, blasting, calling them out, for creating all of this violence throughout the rest of the world. It reminded me of Martin Luther King. My country is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world. Bruce, good cop, bad cop. I mean, it's really, for me, really a good sign, but surprising that China, who has been so diplomatic, is so quiet, doing its thing around the world for the last 20 years, to come out publicly now and blast the United States. What are your thoughts?
Well, as you're saying that, the word that came to my mind was blistering. China blistered the United States. And everybody around the world heard that, okay? And let me tell you what, there's a lot of countries, a lot of people all across the global south that are cheering on China right now for having told that truth, that essential truth to the world. And that's what's needed right now. This phony rules-based order, rules-based order of the Western countries. They make up the rules whenever they want. They change them day in and day out. You never know what they really are. This idea of democracy that is the biggest phony thing you've ever heard in your life. It's all being exposed now to the world. And so in a way, you can say that the so-called Biden administration, in a way, has been a gift to the world because it has revealed beyond doubt now that the United States is a phony baloney. It's phony, and its democracy is not real, that it's controlled by the Zionists, both inside the United States and the Zionists from Israel. I mean, we know the story that in the Congress of the United States, if you stand up and speak out against Israel, the Zionist, the AIPAC, the American Israeli Political Action Committee, has made a clear public threat. Any politician in the United States government that supports and won't support Israel in every way will be taken out in the next election, and they will spend as many millions of dollars to do it as possible. And so in the Congress, these weak-kneed senators and representatives, their knees are shaking in fear that if they don't do what Israel wants them to, they're going to be taken out in the next election. Oh my God, they're going to run me out, and my donations from the military industrial complex and the Wall Street barons, they're going to dry up, and I'm going to have to go home and get a real job, So this is the way it works. And that's all been exposed now. The whole world knows that America is nothing but a big fat lie.
Hey, Bruce, you just mentioned that the rest of the world is now recognizing, thanks to the Biden administration, that the United States and this whole thing about democracy is a big fat lie. Bruce, you've been a dear friend for, I don't know, almost 2 decades now. You have been an organizer without a peer for all of your adult life. You've had your ear to the tracks. You've had the boots on the ground everywhere. Bruce, I have to know this. As someone born in the United States that doesn't recognize my country at all anymore, like you mentioned in the beginning, I've lost friends, too many to count, strained relations with family members. What are you hearing after this election? Donald Trump, make America great again. What are American people beginning to wake up? Do you think it's possible that some of these people who have abandoned us might see and hear the truth? Bruce, I got to know what you think is going on.
Well, you being a Mainer probably know the name of the musician David Mallet. He just died. And I put a song on my blog today. My blog is called Organizing Notes, Notes. I hope you'll put it in the description, a link to it. But he's got a song called Celebration. And he's a, Mainer, lifelong Mainer, lived in a rural part of the state, kind of has a country style, but very human and political. But in this one song, he sings about too many people looking down, too many factories closing, too many politicians lying, too many people dying, too many. So anyway, I think that song for me really tells the story of America. And he showed images of poverty and mills closing down in Maine and all those kinds of things. And he really captures for me the state of America today. And it's the song is a challenge to the American people. Wake up. And he uses the word now a lot. We should be celebrating. We should be celebrating our nation. We should be celebrating our people, but we're not, because of all these problems and contradictions that we're not dealing with. And we must deal with it now. And if we don't, we're going to continue to falter and fall. And then we think times are hard now with inflation the way it is and the prices going up in the grocery stores dramatically. And increasingly, people are having a hard time surviving. Businesses are closing all the time. So I think the American people largely are depressed. And a lot of them in our quote unquote movements have given up. They think you can't beat City Hall, as my mother used to tell me. She wanted me to go get a job, that I would have a business card that she could brag about, okay? Instead of being this organizer that I've been since 1978 when I quit college and went to work for the United Farm Workers Union, organizing fruit pickers in Florida. That's how I began my career as an organizer, and I've been doing it ever since. But I love the people of this country too much. I love this earth that we live on too much. I love the animals. There's a bird. We have a big bush just outside of our window here in our living room. And there was a hawk sitting on that bush for quite a while just before I came on the interview with you. And I love the birds and all the other animals too much to ever think about quitting. You know, I, it can't for a moment ever enter my mind that I should quit and give up. And I keep telling people these days, keep paddling. The waters are rising, our country is collapsing. Keep paddling, don't give up. And so this is what I see and feel in this country today. We're at a real crossroads right now. And are we just going to surrender to the oligarchs? Are we going to surrender to Wall Street and to Israel? Or are we going to fight to have a real country, our own country, sovereignty? We don't have sovereignty in this country, just like a lot of other countries that are controlled by the Western colonial powers, whether they're in Africa or Latin America, in the Middle East, or in Asia. We need, here in this country, we need sovereignty to be our own country, not be ruled by foreign money and foreign powers and by oligarchs inside of our own country that don't care anything about this country except stealing whatever they can from us, stealing the wealth of this nation. That recent assassination of a health insurance company CEO has really sparked a lot of discussion in this country about how these corporations run everything and how they are stealing money every month from people that are paying premiums to these health insurance companies who then deny them the care that they've been paying for. And people are fed up with it. So the question is, what are we going to do about it? When are we going to stand up and fight back? That's the real challenge in this country today.
Um, it's really interesting, Bruce. The Russian people, the people that I know, and I think they're pretty representative of Russians everywhere, they do not want to believe that this stuff is happening in the United States, that democracy, well, when you say democracy in America, they'll reply with sarcasm. They know that it doesn't exist, but they can't believe that America is bankrupt. They can't believe that America is corrupt, that there's corruption in America. It's just their image, probably from the Soviet days and from Hollywood and music that they've loved.
Yeah.
They have a hard time accepting the fact that this is going on in the United States. Now,
well, let me say something here. $36 trillion in debt today. That's what the United States is. Right now, they can't afford to build new submarines. They can't afford to build the missiles to put on the submarines. Their aircraft carriers, some of them are inoperable right now, and they can't afford to put them all out on the oceans. And so the entire military industrial complex is wasted so much money. They haven't passed the last 17 audits. Federal audits of the Pentagon have all failed because they can't account for trillions and trillions of dollars of money that was taxpayer dollars that were given to the Pentagon. So the Russian people ought to wake up and see what's really happening in this country, because it's fallen apart like crazy. And it's only a matter of time that we're going to grind to a halt and a collapse, just like when the Soviet Union collapsed in the early 1990s and the country began to dissolve. The death rate increased dramatically. The crime rate increased dramatically. Poverty increased dramatically. The oligarchs were stealing money from the Russian people like crazy. That same kind of thing is happening now and is going to accelerate because of this massive debt we have in this country. And it's only going to get worse because we have no leadership that's doing anything. We don't have a Vladimir Putin that came in and saved Russia in the early 90s from a total disaster. We don't have that in this country. It ain't going to be Donald Trump.
I wanted to ask you about that. Trump, from my perspective, ran as a populist. Make America great again. I want to take care of the middle class. I want to get rid of all this corruption in government. I want to get rid of these trillions of dollars that are being wasted. And he's got what's his name? The Tesla guy.
Musk.
Yeah, Elon Musk and Ramaswamy, who are going to cut trillions of dollars from the budget. I mean, do you think Trump really could pull that off? I mean, this sounds very appealing to people.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I've talked to, we're out on the street a lot here. We had 2 protests yesterday. Today's Sunday. Yesterday was Saturday. We had a protest at Bath Iron Works, where they build Navy destroyers, the Aegis destroyers. And then we had a protest in Freeport in front of LL Bean, the famous outdoors marketer of clothing and outdoor supplies, a longtime famous Maine company. The town of Freeport is like a shopping mecca. And 40 of us went there for 90 minutes. We had a protest outside of LL Bean. We walked up and down the streets on both sides chanting slogans supporting Palestine. And the traffic was huge. The people were on the streets going from store to store shopping. We saw a lot of people. And anyway, I forgot what I was going to say now other than that. But what was your question?
Trump, can Trump bring America back again? Can
Oh,
Trump
yeah.
cut all the
Yeah.
corruption, drain the swamp, eliminate
I,
trillions of dollars?
I don't see it. I don't see, with the people he's appointing, uh, most of them are Zionists. They're Wall Street people. They're military industrial complex people, with the exception of RFK Jr., who's good on some issues. He's terrible on Israel and Gaza and Palestine, but he's good on healthcare. He's good on environmental issues. Maybe he'll do something good, you know, but I don't even know if the Senate will vote to allow him to be in the cabinet. So we don't know. But I want to say something about Elon Musk. I think what Musk is all about because he wants to colonize Mars. Every time you see him in the newspaper or on TV, he's always wearing that T-shirt that says "Occupy Mars." He's a colonizer. He wants to colonize space to not move our civilization there. He knows that's bullshit. He wants to mine the planetary bodies for precious resources. They say there's magnesium and cobalt and uranium on Mars. He wants to go there and mine it. He wants to occupy Mars, but it's going to take massive amounts of money to do that. And where's he going to get that money? He's going to get it from Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. That's what he wants to do, is cut social spending, environmental spending, and use that money to colonize space. That's why he got into the government.
Uh, that's interesting. It's nothing to laugh about, but it's he's quite a con man. Uh,
Oh, yeah.
and I don't know. Uh, we've been talking about make America great again, and uh, how the corporations really control America. And this Luigi Mangione, this Italian kid who executed the United Healthcare Corporation executive Brian Thompson last week,
Allegedly. Allegedly.
allegedly. Well, he's become somewhat of a folk hero, hasn't he?
Yeah. But there's some people talking that he might not have actually, the guy that they arrested might not have been the shooter. I don't know, but they're raising some interesting stories and raising some issues. So we'll see how that goes. Um, but yeah, he's become a huge folk hero. All kinds of people are talking about him. And his trial should be quite a show.
It's quite something, Bruce. I made a sarcastic remark last week, not publicly. I didn't publish it anywhere on social media, but I said the circus is getting so interesting. I got to stock up on my popcorn and my bottles of wine. Instead of one bottle at a time, I got to start buying it by the case because
Yeah,
this is getting really incredible. You don't want to leave your seat.
yeah.
Um, all right, I want to go back. You've mentioned Zionism and Israel two or three times, and I wanted to talk about that tonight. Um, the label they're going to put on anybody is you're anti-Semite, and you and I both know that's a lot of BS. Israel uh, was an artificially created state. It is not representative of the Jewish people, the Jewish religion. They are Zionist. They are not a religious entity at all. Now, Bruce, I don't want to go over Syria. I don't want to go over Lebanon. I and about all of the killing, the devastation, the the brutality that Israel has gotten away with their attacks on Gaza and Lebanon and Syria and Iran. I want to ask you this, Bruce, those Zionists have a plan. Some people talk about the Greater Israel, and you can look at parts of Lebanon, the Golan Heights, parts of Egypt.
Yeah.
And Bruce, I have to tell you, in Ukraine, right next door, a bunch of Jews desecrated a Christian, I don't know if it was Catholic or Orthodox church, just this weekend. There are streets that have Jewish names on them in parts of Ukraine. It's been talked about here that when this Ukrainian thing is over, part of it is going to be part of the Greater Israel. So, Bruce, what the heck do you think is the Zionist plan for the future?
Well, I think their plan is world domination. And we have an existential battle. You might not, in a way, call it a celestial battle. The battle between good and evil. And to me, Israel as a Zionist entity represents this key player representing the dark side in this struggle, for control of the planet. Global slavery, I would call it, because what are they doing to the people of Gaza? Look at the way they're genociding those people, and in the most brutal, ugly, evil way. And so clearly, this Israel that was created by the Rothschild family in the United Kingdom has long been seen as America and the UK, the Western military base in the Middle East. And their job has always been about expansion. And so you're right to call it Greater Israel, because that's what they call it. And they want to move into Iraq as well. You listed these other countries. They want parts of those countries. They want part of Iraq as well. And unless they're stopped by the international community, they will keep driving and driving and driving. But eventually, like everything, there's an Achilles heel. Who's going to continue to pay for the armaments? Who's going to continue to build those armaments if the American economy collapses, as it is now on course to do? Who's going to pay for Israel's armaments when the European economy collapses, as it is now on pace to do? And so how much longer can Israel continue? And how much longer will the Arab populations throughout the Middle East, watching Israel move towards taking control of their communities the way they have done recently in Lebanon and in Palestine, in Syria now, and we all worry that they've got their sights on Iran. So how much longer will the Arab communities in the Middle East allow Israel to continue to do this? This is the question of our time. And I think for any human being right now to be a witness to this genocide that is taking place at the hands of these Zionists, any human being must stand up and speak out. They must resist this madness that's happening in our moment in history. There's no other way to look at it.
I had lunch with two other Americans. One of them has been a good friend for a number of years now. He's lived in Russia, married to a Russian. It's got to be well over 10 years. Jewish by birth, but he's a Christian. He's become Orthodox, married to a Russian woman. And at lunch, we were talking about this very topic, about Zionism. What's the plan? And he basically said a couple of things. Their plan of the Zionists is world domination. He said they look at the rest of us as goy, Goy. And goy is anybody who is not Jewish. In this case, Zionist. They want to eliminate us. This is a plan for genocide that goes back a long time. And then we talked about what is it really? And he said, almost paraphrasing what you just said, it's a battle of good against evil. It's the primordial battle, good angels against bad angels. And this is what he believes we're seeing today. And I have to agree.
Well, let me ask you something.
Yeah.
You were trained as a Catholic priest. You studied in Rome. You know something about the Bible and the stories. How does this relate to, what you learned and what you've learned since by reading other things? People like Zechariah Sitchin and, religious historians. How does all this fit into what you've learned about the history of this planet?
It doesn't fit at all, Bruce.
No?
Trust me, I have studied alternative sources, uh, alternative mythologies from ancient civilizations that predate Israel in the Old Testament. I wish that I knew today that I could have brought forth when I was studying theology in Rome. We were just spoon-fed, bottle-fed Catholic doctrine, the traditional interpretation of the scriptures, Old Testament and New. And you were never allowed to ask a question. This was a Jesuit educational system. I was trained by the Jesuits 4 years in Rome. The guy came in, he gave a lecture, you took notes, and you spit it back. And you could have a chance to do your exam in Latin or written in your own language. And Bruce, I have to tell you, and I have to be careful how I say this, there are other sources that are real, that are credible, that depend on ancient documents that have since been discovered, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the documents that have been found recently in Egypt, which present a different view, not only of Christianity, but these forces, powerful forces that have been unseen, that have shaped our minds, especially in the West, I have to say that, and they've shaped our view of history and the world. And that allows me to say, as carefully as I can, that what we're seeing is a battle of good versus evil. They are powerful forces that are unseen. And my only hope is that the forces of good prevail, that the forces of good have inspired people like yourself, many other well-meaning Christians of different denominations, people who don't hold any religion. I really think that the Native American people, the indigenous people around the world, have understood the meaning of creation. They've understood the plan of the Great Spirit, which was to represent Mother Earth, to treat everything with respect, other individuals. The game that they killed, they offered sacrifice and they gave thanks. Now, for me, this belief represents the creation myth of the Garden of Eden, that all things existed for the benefit of all. And Adam and Eve were entrusted with it all. And I look at what we have done, humanity, over the last several thousand years, have got the planet to the state that it's in today. Chaos, killing, corruption, power, greed, and they're saying climate change is a hoax. I'm not going to argue for that right now. Anybody that has any eyes to see can look around and see the degradation of the environment everywhere, from the forest of Maine to the forest of the Amazon, to the seas, the oceans, everywhere you look, the pollution.
Yeah.
What we have done to the Garden of Eden as human beings is a result of the forces of evil.
You know, there was a wonderful former Catholic priest by the name of Dennis McCarthy. He worked in Latin America for many years. He eventually left the priesthood like you did, and he moved to Florida. And when I used to work for the Florida Coalition for Peace and Justice, he was one of our members. And he would often talk to me about this very thing. And he learned a lot about this issue of the light forces and the dark forces through his work with indigenous people in Latin America when he was a priest there. And he really adapted their beliefs into his own beliefs system. And he told me many times that I should never forget that I've been called by the light forces to work for peace, to work for justice, to work for sanity, to work for a love for the environment, for all of nature, for all the animals, all the plants, the air, the water, and that was my job as a human being. Nothing more important than that. And so I've followed that advice of that dear man for many years since he taught me these things. And you, I think, also represent many of these same ideas and values.
Well, I'll end on that point, and we've got a few more minutes left. I do think that many people have been inspired and infused by the light forces, by the spirit, if you will, the spirit of the Creator. There are many people all over the globe who have embraced this vision and have embraced the mission to become workers for truth, for the light, for peace, for tranquility, for respect of the planet. And it's common sense, Bruce. It's not a religious thing. When you look at what's happening to the planet, if we continue on the path we're on, this Garden of Eden, what's left of it, is going to disappear, and it will not support any form of life. Your thoughts? We've got about 2 minutes.
Well, I agree with you 100%. And I don't really know what else to say, except I'm in awe of the responsibility that I feel, the connection to all of my relatives that came before me, generations of generations of generations of generations that lived through famines, droughts, plagues, wars, you name it, to get me here today. And now in my time, our generation, if you will, our current moment, we're entrusted with this life, with this planet that we live on. And I'm in awe of that responsibility. And I accept the task. I accept the challenge with humility, but with also bold determination to tell the truth as I see it, as I understand it, as I know it, no matter what anyone says to me, no matter how many friends I lose, no matter, whatever, I must stand with that, and I will. Thank you, Regis.
Yeah, and I think, it's what you've described is getting to know who you are and where you are from and what your purpose is when you carry this light. So take care, my friend. You have a happy holidays. We'll
All
look
right, you
forward to
too.
seeing you soon.
All right, bye-bye. Thanks.